Guys, welcome to another Sales Wisdom podcast. Today with us, we have Chris Spafford. He is president and founder at Frable. Chris, welcome to the pod. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Frable?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. I definitely appreciate the invitation to be on the podcast. And Frable is the company that I started about a year and a half ago to basically help small and medium-sized business grow revenue. I help them grow sales infrastructure and help them with additional training programs.
Got it. And how do you do that specifically? What tactics do you use?
Probably the first thing and most important thing that I do is I put everyone through a pretty comprehensive assessment, really to measure the four primary areas of sales infrastructure, which would be strategy, methodology, analysis, and organization. And from there, we can really take a look at where the gaps are between best in class and where they are, and put together a plan, a comprehensive plan to build a sales playbook that will give them a sustainable and scalable infrastructure.
Okay. So you build a plan. Selling plans in the recession, it can be harder. I was just talking to a friend before you that was mentioning that he sold experiments, for example, prior to the recession. And during the recession, he kind of modified his offer. So what kind of response are you getting for your prospects nowadays? Is it still positive? Do they still hire consultants for plans, or is it more quiet?
No, it's still busy. Based on the survey results of over 3,000 assessments that have been done, well over 70% of all clients rate themselves poor or below average on these four areas that I've been talking about. And the bottom line is, whether it's a recession or whether it's a good economy, you've still got to sell to have a viable business. So if you're not
Correct.
doing well, it only gets worse in a recession.
Yep.
And quite frankly, the fee for me to come in and help a company put together a plan is minuscule compared to the results they achieve.
Yeah, the fee, I think you and I were talking about 3 to 5K per month, right? And is that your interim CRO service, or is it something else?
No, so basically what I have is two things. If we go through a sales playbook from the very beginning to end, there's 10 modules that start with basically hiring, how to hire, who to hire. A lot of times you need to get new salespeople on board, strategy, all the way through to developing KPIs to take a forward look at your business. That takes between 12 and 14 weeks.
Okay.
And the cost for that program in total is about $30,000.
Okay.
Okay. And as a fractional sales leader, basically someone to come in and work with the sales team on a part-time basis, the fee works out to be around $10,000 a month.
Okay.
So if you look at that compared to the cost of a full-time VP of sales, it's at a much discounted rate, and you're still going to get the same benefit.
Okay. And you work mostly with small businesses. You told me like last time. I see logistics, I see manufacturing here. Is that correct?
Yeah. So from a company size standpoint, companies with $100 million in revenue or below
Okay.
are in my wheelhouse,
Hmm.
right? In terms of, the type of value I can provide to them.
Hmm.
In terms of industry, it's really, what I do is industry agnostic. I'm not teaching product. I'm not teaching service. What I'm doing is I'm setting up process. So I'm making sure that the salespeople are held accountable. They've got a good set of goals and incentive to move forward, be successful. And there's a process to follow in a CRM where you can basically quantify your business success on a daily basis.
Got it. How do you close a 30K deal if it's not a referral?
It's a value proposition, and I don't want to say every deal is a 30K deal. It's 30,000 soup to nuts. So a lot of times people don't need everything I offer. So I'm not out to sell everything all the time. What I'm looking to do is fill the gaps. If someone needs help with developing a compensation system for their sales team, for example, that's obviously not $30,000. It's probably $3,000, right? Easy to sell. What I want to do is make sure that I'm adding value, and the value, my cost is much less than the value I'm adding for those components. So I don't, at the end of the day, if someone has a need and is looking to solve that need, my value proposition is pretty good.
100%. I know a lot of consultants that are focused on timelines, basically. So accomplishing and checking items on a list and, okay, I'm going to do this by 20th of March. I'm going to do this by this date. I'm also wondering if you have an ROI component or if you talk about returns in the 30K plan, because it seems like a pretty big deal.
So yeah, absolutely. So in terms of return, what I do when I set up sales infrastructure is I'm basically setting up the foundation for success. You're not going to see a return on that the day after I'm done, right? That's going to take time. But within 3 months, you'll see a noticeable improvement because you should have captured the data, enough data in your CRM to start analyzing how much you need at the top of the sales funnel to get a return out of the bottom of the sales funnel. And you can start planning accordingly. And along the way, you begin to identify gaps in competency, right? So you look at a typical sales process, you've got 5 to 7 steps. As you move through the steps of the sales process, particularly your team, you'll see when someone has trouble advancing from one step to the next. Those are skill gaps, right? So for skill gaps, what I do is I have a training program to help them through those skill gaps and get them more proficient. So again, 3 months, that gives you the initial look at success. If there's any gaps in skill in terms of closing deals, moving things from one stage to another, figure out another 2 to 3 months to get that in place. So within 3 to 6 months, you're going to be experiencing the benefit.
What coaching aspect do you also include in there? Because you build the plan, do you also coach the team and follow up on them?
Yeah, so I work pretty closely with the team, especially if I'm brought on as a fractional VP of sales. I'm actually meeting with the team once a week in terms of a group meeting and then one-on-ones, where we're going over very specifically what they've achieved during the week relative to their goals, where are the hot spots, what are the trouble spots. And really my goal as a sales leader, any sales leader, is to break down the barriers that are keeping the sales folks from success. That's my primary function.
Got it. For the fractional CRO role, what is the time implication on that one? Because I wanted to offer these similar services myself with fractional VP sales, for example. But what's the cost in terms of time on that one, and how many clients can you scale that?
So it's a great question, Charles. I think, from my perspective, I go in starting at 8 hours a week, and 8 hours usually is not one continuous day. So it's probably 4 hours one day and a series of phone calls on other days, right? But if you just take the approach of 8 hours a week, you could handle 4 clients, no more than 4 clients, right? Because you need, for me anyway, I need another day just for all the other stuff that comes along with it, right? Preparation for meetings, networking. I've got to keep my pipeline going as well. So 4 clients at any one time. And just in terms of longevity, I think the typical engagement's 12 to 18 months. I keep mine on a month-to-month basis just because things change in someone's environment. Maybe they're ready to hire a full-time person sooner rather than later. And all I do is ask for a couple months notice, and I'll actually help a business owner bring in a full-time sales leader if that's what they want to do, and just move on to the next client.
What's basically the shift from engineering to sales? Because your background's in electrical engineering and you kind of went all in sales. You've recently had an MBA. How is it to shift from one profession to the other, and what did you bring from engineering to sales?
Yeah, it's a great question. So just a correction. Even though my degree is in engineering, I was never an engineer. I couldn't engineer my way out of a box. I was just good at math, right? So when I started my career, I went down the business path in terms of applications engineering, really cut my teeth on solution sales. And every company I worked for when I was working in corporate, always had some technical component to it. So it was always electromechanical in some way, shape, or form. And the way I utilize my knowledge is in that solution sales capacity or as a sales leader for a technology company. I could understand the applications. I could plan strategy for the business much easier because I knew the product line and I knew how it worked, right? So that's really how I played my technology background.
Okay, and last question for you. What would you recommend new salespeople that are starting out in business and in sales? What would you recommend them to adopt as a habit? What would you tell them to do in terms of prospecting to be successful initially?
That's a fantastic question. And I have the answers for you because I see it all the time. Number one, first thing out of the gate, start networking. Continue to network wherever you have the opportunity. You want to know as many people as possible because you never know where your next real opportunity is going to come from. That's number one. Number two, learn how to use CRM as a tool and just not as one of those things you have to do at the end of the week. Because what I see all the time is salespeople today that are using CRM, it's more of a burden than a tool. They're doing it because they have to. If you learn how to use it the right way from the very beginning, it is an incredible tool that makes you very efficient. And what it does, it will allow you to add other enablement tools to allow you more sales time during the week. You know, the average amount of time a salesperson actually sells is less than 40%. So the big challenge is trying to improve that 40% to something much greater than that. Because when you get to that point, you start closing more deals, you'll exceed your numbers, and you'll be a rock star. You'll be in the top 5%. Easy formula. Those two things alone. That's all you have to do.
Love it. So where can people find out more about Chris?
Certainly my website, which is frabule-llc.com. So FRABUL-LLC.com. Or I'm on LinkedIn. Just put in Chris Spafford. And if you see this video, you'll see my picture.